Good morning, everybody. So, the next session is teaching the Dharma Sutra with Venerable Miao Guang. So, we can join palms. Half bow. Good morning, Venerable.
Good morning. Please be seated.
Only for.
Okay, dear Buddhas to be, but who are not really Buddhas. Dear human beings, but who are really aspiring, enlightening, sentient beings. Dear you, good morning. How are you today? I couldn't help but notice the room is kind of lopsided because everyone's sitting on this side of the room. And so last night when I came in, I asked Venerable Fan and Aina, what's going on? You know, why is the room lopsided? And then they said they didn't know. But I came to my own brilliant conclusion. Okay, for one thing, it's closer to the snacks. And second, it's near it's closer to the doors. So when you need a break, you will be a shorter route to the bathroom. Okay? So that being said, I would say you guys are actually quite practical. Right? You're realistic, you're practical about everything that you do and every action that you take. And so that is actually part of our enlightening nature, isn't it? You seek a good way and an effective way to liberation. Right? When you're hungry, you liberate yourself by moving towards the snack bar. When you need to go to the loo, when you're busting, right? You'll be glad that you're sitting near the door instead of sitting where Aina is. Right? And then she has been receiving treatments in her knee, and so when she actually walks, she actually takes a bit more effort. Right? And so when you think about all these conditions that put you together, right, you could not help but always think about how do I actually liberate myself from these challenges and problems every day. And so that is exactly the reason why we have chosen this book for this year's annual symposium, or the national symposium, for all of you aspiring Dharmas to think about when you're teaching. What exactly are you teaching? And so this book on the Dharma Sutra says it's about the Dharma Sutra. But for those who have read it, some of you might have been a little bit dumbfounded, right? To say, hey, is this book really about the Dharma Sutra? Okay. Can I see a show of hands, those who agree with what I've said? Okay, just a few, right? Uncertain hands kind of going up and down. To raise my hands is not to raise my hands, right? To realize the actual teaching of the Dharma Sutra, what is, isn't. Okay. And so only a handful of you have raised your hands. What about those who haven't? How many of you have not read the book? Okay, everyone has, okay, one. Okay, Robert. Okay. How many have read the book in detail? Okay, about half. And so we have a variety in this room. Okay? But the purpose of today is actually for us to discuss ways to understand and then to share what you have understood about the book. And so the first 2 hours will serve as a walkthrough for those who are still unclear about what this book is really about. Okay? And so if you haven't read it, maybe we'll be able to do it quickly in the next 2 hours, and then to figure out what it's actually really about. That's all I'm doing. Okay? All I'm doing this morning is not to explain the Dharma Sutra to you, the Dharma Sutra. All I'm doing is to let the text speak for itself, so that when you're about to process these words and these ingredients, later after these 2 guided reading sessions, then you will be more clear with what you're dealing with. Okay? So you're like cooks, right? So this morning we'll just talk about, what's there? The carrots, the potatoes, right? The peas, the flowers. But this, and then after that, you will be cooking these ingredients yourself. Okay? So I would just like to clarify that for this morning, just in case you become utterly disappointed by the end of these 2 sessions and say, hey, I thought she was going to talk about the Dharma Sutra. Right? But remember, the Dharma Sutra is about not talking, no explanation, no concept, no theory. Right? It's about shunyata. And so technically I'm done. Right? It's like, let's talk about nothing. Okay, begin. But nevertheless, only bodhisattvas who have come near the attainment of Buddhahood, or those who have already entered the realm of Buddhahood, will understand what it is like to communicate in silence, to speak without words, and to attain something without attaining anything. But for us, we are still ordinary beings with very, very little and thin merits and virtues. It's like we're still walking on thin ice towards that goal. And so we will still need our crutches, we will still need our fairies, and we will still need our fellow supports to help each other across the shore. And so that's what we will do today. And so in this morning, as we talk about teaching the Diamond Sutra with this book, I went through the book a couple of times and tried to find answers to when people say, hey, is this really about the Diamond Sutra? Right? It doesn't really show me the structure of the Diamond Sutra, does it? Or what are the main points of the Diamond Sutra that this book wants to explain? And so I would say the brilliance of this book by Venerable Master Hsing is exactly as it is. When the Buddha says, if you seek the Dharma in form, if you seek the Dharma in words, if you seek the Dharma in any ideas, then you're not seeking the Dharma. And therefore, coming onto this book, it allows us a chance to kind of back our way into the garage, right? Back our way home. And then you realize the moment you're settled by backing into your home, then you have a much clearer view of the world. And so think of this as a reverse order in your process of understanding Dharma Sutra. You might discover that maybe after today's discussion and sharing, then it becomes a very wonderful preparation for you to go back to the Dharma Sutra, for one thing. And secondly, you're going to be utterly surprised with how much of it you are already practicing under the guidance of Venerable Master Hsing. And so let's go into understanding how he actually lays out the book to help us break free from the words of the Diamond Sutra, but really, really penetrate the spirit of it. That's a brilliant part. And we can already see this in his foreword. He explains his motives for writing the book, this book very clearly. So first of all, to begin with this very important topic. Why has he written this on top of his commentary on the Diamond Sutra in Chinese? And so he opens by talking about our previous understanding of the Diamond Sutra would be, first of all, it's a holy, or it's a sacred text, isn't it? Especially for those who come from a strong Chinese Buddhist background, you realize that sometimes, even without understanding or practicing the Dharma Sutra, you will already gain merits by sponsoring the printing of the sutra. So many of our parents have really donated in our names, right, to sponsor the printing of the sutras because they hope that in the path of doing so, their children will become wiser. They will do better in exams, right? They will succeed in life. And so in the earlier days, the Buddhist sutras are really treated as objects of merits that people either worship, right, or people receive blessing from by reciting, by copying, right, by sharing the text of the sutra. But you might also see in cases when there are memorial services, the Diamond Sutra will be chanted as a way of deliverance. And so when the Diamond Sutra is involved as a part of the ritual, right, you're actually really guiding the deceased and those involved in the process of chanting to see that, oh yes, it's a chance for us to penetrate this profound wisdom of the Buddha by chanting it. And in the process of doing so, the merit will help us deliver our deceased loved ones or our ancestors. 金刚宝忏. But most importantly, Venerable Master wants to say that it's actually a way of cultivation. You might discover that in everything you do, the Diamond Sutra is backing up all of your actions as a practicing Buddhist. When you say nothing is really there, right, it's backing you up. And when you say, okay, I need to let go, it's really backing you up. Right? When you're trying to break through the concept of language, it's backing you up. And so Diamond Sutra becomes important in these three major ways. Which one has it applied to you so far? Can I see a show of hands? Just one? One out of the three? Okay. Two? At least two out of these three are applying to you. This is helping you benefit from the Diamond Sutra already. No? Two? Yvonne is thinking, two.
No, I think three.
How about all three? Okay. Oh, okay. So still very few. So the majority of you are still thinking about your connection with the Dharma Sutra. That's fine. Right? You're establishing your relationship with it. Okay? And so the best way to establish your relationship with the Dharma Sutra is to respond to Venerable Master's motive for writing his sequel to his commentary on the Dharma Sutra by saying that, after all, whatever it is that you read, I hope that you can understand that Dharma is more than just the talk. If you have talked it and never walked it, and then you have never understood the Dharma Sutra. And so practice, practice, practice. Right? There's so many ways to put the Dharma into practice, but this book has become such a wonderful guide to how we can practice the profound ideas. And we will be able to see it in the later parts of my walkthrough. And number three, you will also see in his foreword, he actually gives you some directions to how to use this book. So although the entire structure of the Dharma Sutra is not really provided in this book, but he has extracted quotes from the sutra that will reflect our real life, profound, wise practice, and also gong'ans, presented by Chan masters in the past that really reflect the non-dualistic, profound prajna wisdom of an attained bodhisattva. Okay, for example, if you walk up to a Chan master and say, how do you attain enlightenment? He will tell you to go to the loo. Go and pee. That's all you need to do. Right? How do you discover your Buddha nature? Eat when you need to eat, sleep when you need to sleep, talk when you need to talk, and do nothing when you need to do nothing. Very straightforward. And so these become very nice examples of our past predecessors in the practice of the Dharma to show that, yes, in fact, they were breathing the Dharma. They were living the Dharma Sutra. And so as we go through the book, if you can hold on to these three main purposes by the author, you're going to find the book quite helpful. And so just a quick look over the table of contents, you will be able to see that we can divide the book into three sections. From chapter 1 and 3, he spends quite a bit of discussion on what the title of the sutra means. What is the Prajna Paramita Sutra? Right? The Vajracchedika Prajna Paramita Sutra. But what have you noticed about the order of the title, which he renders? It's in the exact reverse order. So he's really driving the car backwards. Right? But when you back into your garage, you have a wider view of what's in front of you. That's what he wants to do. So he begins with the idea of parami, or paramita. Right? The idea of true accomplishment and true success. And then he goes into prajna, the secret to achieving that success. And thirdly, one of the ways to achieving that secret will be the Vajracchedika, that is, to destroy your delusions. Okay? You understand by first realizing what you don't understand. The best way you can know something is to know that you don't know. The Socratic wisdom that I now know that I don't know. That will be our way to enlightenment. And so on these three chapters, you explore a little bit about these three key words. And then from chapter 4 to 7, you move into the second part of the book, which are ways to actually put the Vajracchedika Prajna Paramita into practice. And then he divides it into 4 very interesting ways. I quite like it. And it's actually a process of spiritual self-development in your understanding of the Dharma too. And so the first way is to give without notions, 无相不施, which is probably one of the most important discussions of the Dharma Sutra, to talk about what do we mean by lakshana, or xiang. And once you understand it, you need to break it. What is the lakshana of yourself? Right? And then how do you go about breaking it to really break free from the restrictions that you have placed onto yourself? To the fact that Anna can only speak English, but I tell you she speaks Chinese. She laughs at my Chinese jokes. Right? She breaks through from the lakshana of language, and actually she catches my sense of humor or, our understanding. And so, breaking free from our sense of notions is one of the ways for us to give rise to boundless merits. You will see that every action you have done from then on becomes meritorious. And then secondly, to move from without notion, then you go on to breaking free from the notion of self. Is this me? Okay. And so to break free from the notion of self, this becomes the second way of practice for you to cultivate great compassion, Mahakaruna. That is to treat everybody as equals with unconditional kindness. And that requires your criteria of no differentiation. And the third way, you finally, having broken free from that sense of notion, especially the sense of self, that becomes the troublemaker in our life, mainly, then you will be able to live without abiding in any kind of concept. So can you see that enlightening self expanding as you move along these three ways of practice? And then finally, you will realize that you will be able to cultivate even without wanting to attain anything. And so to give you this in a nutshell, does this not sound like the Heart Sutra? When Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva was coursing in the deep prana, he realized that the 5 skandhas were empty, thus he overcame all ills and suffering. Right? So these simple lines actually cover the 4 ways of cultivation. The first 2 would be a way to transcend yourself, and the second way to really reach out to others and to help others. Right? This completes the cycle of spiritual cultivation. And then finally, you will see at the end of the book, right? Venerable Master is still quite understanding. He could foretell our confusion about why is this book titled the Diamond Sutra, but nothing about it is actually on the Diamond Sutra. So he goes, okay, I'm going to give you the Diamond Sutra. Right? The appendix will consist of the content of the sutra text. And if you refer to the Chinese version, you will also be very happy because you get to see both the classical Chinese, which is the translation done by Kumarajima, and also the vernacular Chinese, explained in simple, straightforward terms. Okay? So moments when you don't understand, he says, this is how you understand. And moments when you understand, he will tell you, okay, you still don't understand. Yeah. Enjoy. Enjoy the enlightening confusion. Right? It becomes sweeter and sweeter, and then your fruit in the end is nothing to be attained. That's what he wants to say. But also you will enjoy the verses of the Diamond Sutra that he has particularly selected for you to understand what is the core of the Heart Sutra, or the Diamond Sutra. And so if you're able to really see the layout of the book, can you now sense a closer relationship to the Diamond Sutra now? You see it, right? He says, okay, we set the goal, and then we pave the way. And then he says, okay, you're ready to go. So it's pretty much like a manual before you actually drive back out into the highway again. Are you ready? Right? Do you have every component of your car? Right? Is it sufficient? And so on. Okay, so far so good? Am I missing any points in the book? I hope not. All right. Okay, and so this is what I usually do. I would actually look at the table of contents and think about how the author paves out the order of each chapter, right? How they related to one another, and that gives me a clearer picture to why it doesn't feel like the Diamond Sutra, right? It's never about the words. And so, a quick walkthrough from chapter 1 to chapter 3. We also wonder why has he titled the book this way. Right? The blue part says 4 insights for finding fulfillment. Right? And then he says, if you don't understand what I mean, it's a practical guide to the Heart Sutra. It's actually a guide itself in the Diamond Sutra. So why do I keep saying Heart Sutra? Heart Sutra, Diamond Sutra, yeah, every sutra, Prajnaparamita. Anyways, Okay? And so, as a practical guide to the Diamond Sutra, obviously, we can think about why the title becomes so important. Okay? The original Sanskrit title is the Vajra Chetika Pranya Paramita. And I'm missing the word sutra in the end. And so a little connection to see how he has actually reversed the order of the title. You will see the Vajra Chetika falls to the last word of the sutra, right? And pranya becomes what? The 4 insights into finding something which he has provided. And then finally, paramita. Right? What does paramita mean? Parami, paramita. Right? The pineapple, the fruit, right? Typically, paramita is the pineapple because it means it's the fruit. Right? It's the attainment, it's the goal. You have really reached the far shore. And so paramita in this case refers to his word of fulfillment. So again, reversing your car. But what happens is, when you look at pranya, right, he is actually providing a method for you to live, breathe, and walk the Dharma. And that becomes the cause of your paramita. And the goal will be the paramita itself, to reach the far shore, to have yourself fully enlightened, completed, liberated, to have entered nirvana, to be free, right? To have the Hsing, whatever, however, whichever way you want to name it. You can name your own enlightenment. As long as you understand it, as long as it works for you, right? It's pranya. And then finally, being the guide, you will see the uniqueness of the Diamond Sutra in the fact that the Vajra Chetika probably plays a very important role throughout this entire text. And why? Okay, we will see. Okay, again, reversing, going from chapter 3, chapter 2, chapter 1 to see Vajra Chetika Pranya Paramita. This is now, before you want to read anything, set your goal clear. So I'm going to begin with Parami, which is chapter 1, right? Set your goal, and then I'm going to tell you how to get there, right? And then finally, we'll tell you the goodness of getting there. And so in the first 3 chapters, you will have a basic summary of what, how, and why you are trying to achieve paramita, or the goal of enlightenment. And so Vajra Chetika, being the uniqueness, is the fact that we will now see the diamond, right, the indestructible, as the destroyer of affliction, the destroyer of illusion. And you will see in this particular chapter, chapter 3, he will tell you in cases where the diamond is pranya. We'll have the page provided there. We can look at it a bit later. And then it would actually talk to you about how true emptiness gives rise to wonderful existence. Okay, for example, the amazing smartphone screens now. And when you turn it off, there is nothing. But when you turn it on, there is not a single person in this room who will have the exactly identical outline or layout of a smartphone screen as you in this room. Right? Because you create your own conditions. You can do anything on that screen. Right? And so the screen will be the true emptiness because it preserves endless potentials. It remains empty. It has no restrictions. And then you are the ones who make this use of the smartphone a wonderful existence. And then in terms of pranya, we can turn to the second chapter to see, okay, he begins by explaining what exactly is pranya. Quite interestingly, when you try to read it, sometimes you understand it, sometimes you don't. Because pranya is pranya. But you understand it in your own way, in your own words, in your own concepts, and then you will be able to put it into practice. And to put pranya into practice means you find the right solution to your problem at hand and to ensure that the problem is actually solved successfully. Anytime, any day you're able to do that, you are displaying pranya wisdom. And I was just talking to Dr. Lancaster the other day, and so he remembered a talk which I gave, a translation that I did for a talk given by Venerable Master at the end of a 5-day lecture on the Heart Sutra. Right? Venerable Master was talking about what emptiness means, what existence means, and then when he opened it to the floor for questions, a man came up to him and goes, "Oh, I have a major problem right now. I don't know how to get my children to listen to me. They just won't listen to me. How do you get your children to listen to your words?" Right? And so Venerable Master turned to him and says, "Be sure that you have money. When you have money, the children will listen to you." So that's his prajna for the man who has a major family issue. But it's so real, it may seem silly to all of us, but if it works, it's prajna wisdom. And so in this you will be able to see, as we understand that explanation, right, our penetration into the word prajna becomes our realization of each person's endless potential to become anything. Your potential to become anything is your ability to remain empty. Isn't that fun? Right, so right now you could be an audience, but in a few hours you're going to be a participant in a small group discussion in your sharing of the Dharma Sutra. And then maybe by the end of the day, you could be standing up here as a speaker. Right, so which one are you? You could be still be the coffee drinker, right? You'll say, "I'm none of that. I'm just a coffee drinker." But it's okay. Then that's who you are. Okay? And so we will have lots of fun with the word prajna. Okay? Well, our group leaders, the Venerables today, have really prepared you for some of the really fun group discussions and demonstrations for you to find ways to understand what I have been blabbing on about. And then finally, prajna paramita, right? The third word. In chapter 1, the goal really sets whole new things for us. As we talk about reaching the goal, Venerable Master describes it in quite an interesting way. He says, if you want to reach your goal, and if you would like the Dharma Sutra to guide you through that goal, the first thing you do is you need to reconsider your values. That is, you have to unlearn everything you have learned about the Dharma so that you can see the world in a totally new way. You transvalue everything you have said. For example, is karma really a reward or punishment system? Is emptiness really passive? Is emptiness only a notion of letting go? Is causes and conditions only telling you that you're not real, so you're not there? This morning, I was talking to Janice, who stood to my left, right? And I heard this very soft and gentle sound, who said, "Good morning." And so without turning around, I said, "I hear Venerable Hsing, but I don't see her." She was standing behind me. And then she goes, "Yes, technically I'm here, but I'm not here." She was right. But by saying that, the idea of being here can be quite interesting, because right now some of you are really not here. You have drifted off to home. You have drifted off to maybe tomorrow, right? You have driven your car back to yesterday, whatever it is. When you're not in the present moment, then you're not here. So reconsider your values as to how you look at this world through the new lenses given by prajna paramita. And the second thing he says is, okay, now that you have established a clear personal perspective, your new values, right? The next thing is you need to realize the importance of collective work. That is, how do you re-acknowledge the importance of your connection with the rest of the world, so that the cultivation of Dharma is not to become a hermit, right? Not to seclude yourself from the rest of the world in your search for enlightenment, because you will never find it. And so collective creation becomes your ability to cultivate, to expand yourself, right? And to see the positive connections you can develop with the rest of the world. So by paramita, your greatest success is really not enlightenment, but the enlightenment of yourself and your fellow human beings at the same time. That becomes a very interesting collective effort. And that's going to happen in your group work today. I guarantee you 100%. Well, the worst comes to worst by the end of the day when you say, hey, I have learned nothing, that's still your enlightenment. I've become enlightened to the fact that listening to Venerable Miao Guang doesn't lead to enlightenment. Zing! Right, that's your enlightenment. And then finally, we are going back to the very core of Buddhist success, that very ultimate goal of liberation. Right? right? The liberation of ourselves from concepts, from the burdens of words, right? From our preconceptions, from our fear of the unknown. And finally, he would say, I'm going to tell you how to break free from all of this. Right? The best way to break free from your attachment is by giving. Right? Give it away. When you give it away, you don't have it. And so I think just in the opening 3 chapters, it becomes a very interesting read for you to see he's already kind of guiding you through that travel, that trip across the river, isn't he? And so you can think about the messages hidden in the title. And now to go into the 4 ways of practice. The 4 ways of practice is broken down into the 4 points as I have mentioned before. And it begins with chapter 4. The first way of practice is to give without notions, 无相布施. Right? And by notion, he means lakshana, ideas, concepts. Right? And so on page 93, he begins by showing you, first of all, the way to break free from concepts or notion is to realize that they're always changing. Would you hold on to last night's dinner? Well, I mean, some of you still are with your body, right? But not in your mind. Right? But mentally, would you hold on to last night's dinner? You pretty much won't. Why not? Sorry? You didn't have one. Okay. Good. Since there is nothing, there is really nothing to attain. That's pretty good. But you can't do that every night. You have to eat healthily. Yeah. And so you don't hold on to the notion of last night's dinner because it doesn't make you full. It doesn't satisfy any of your bodily needs. Okay. And even if you think about that very nice vegetarian patty that went down well with your rice, you can't taste it now. You know that, so you don't hold on to it. But there are so many things that we choose to hold on to. Right? Venerable Zhiya walked home with me with a very long face. She goes, oh, that vegetarian patty made me so thirsty. Are you still thirsty now? Okay. So just a scan of your body, you will realize the transience of all things. And so in this chapter, of course, Venerable Master goes deeper into how we observe the changing world. But nevertheless, going back to how the Dharma Sutra teaches us to observe the transience of the world, he says there are 6 ways for us to contemplate phenomena. Right? You see them as dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, dew, lightning, and I also see them as coffee. I view everything as coffee because every sip of coffee tastes different, right? Every sip of coffee smells different. And even if you say, oh, I had the best coffee in my life, I'm sorry, you would never have it again. It's as simple as that. Okay? And so worldly affairs are transient. And secondly, once you realize the fact that they're transient, right? It doesn't matter whether you do or do not hold on to them. Okay? So the idea of notion. So let me ask you, when you step on the acceleration pad of the car, what happens to the car? You guys are looking at me going, that's a trick question, isn't it? Okay, normally when you step on the acceleration pad of the car, what happens? Yeah, it moves the car forward, right? So we will take the notion of the acceleration pad of the car as motion. But I'm going to break that motion by asking you now, what if the car is parked on the very deep slope behind Shilai Temple? And when you are about to drive off, right, you don't step on the brake, do you? You step on the brake to make sure that the car stays in the same place. Therefore, at that moment, our notion of the acceleration pad representing motion becomes broken. So technically, it's not even an acceleration pad. It's a gadget, it's a gear to help you maneuver the car in the direction that you want it to move, that's all. So the forward motion becomes broken. So once you see that you can change any combination and any characteristic and ability, there is no notion. And then you come as far as realizing, yes, notion or notion doesn't matter. I'm still who I am. I'm still going to sip my coffee now. Have a break. And so the idea of notion then is given in the beginning part of the chapter 4. And then he says, okay, but to actually break yourself free from notion, he says, okay, I'm going to show you how to give away your attachment, right? And so on page 107, he says, first of all, you give away your attachment by giving wealth, right? And you can also give away people's attachment to their notion of self by giving them fearlessness, by saying, hey, I'm here, right? I'm going to look after you, and so on. There's much more than that. I'm going to leave that to you for this afternoon. And even greater than the giving of wealth and material goods, you give Dharma. You give them that fishing stick, that fishing rod to teach them how to survive. And the best thing about all of this is that to overcome differentiation of the notion of giving, he closes by saying that everyone can give. And so to give without notions, give rise to amazing merits comes in this matter. Give without a sense of self, give without a sense of the receiver, and give without a sense of what is being given. Then becomes spoken in very plain words by the Venerable Master, is to realize that you are treating everybody equally and sharing all that you have with all. So that will be what you can explore about chapter 4. Then chapter 5 will be the second way of practice, is that now that you understand better about the word of lakshana or notion, you come on to the notion of self, which is the hardest thing to break, given the fact that we all have a self. And I went to Beijing last year. I started to give these monthly Dharma reading groups sessions with these groups of college students in Beijing. And they were mainly Peking University students, Tsinghua University students, very brilliant minds, very philosophical minds. And so once this young man came up to me, he says, oh, I have been reading a lot about the Sutra, so now I'm going to see if I have come today, and that I'm going to see if you can enlighten me today. Right? And I looked at him, he did not introduce himself, right? I knew nothing about him, and he's standing there asking me, I'm going to see if you can enlighten me today. And so I asked him, oh, okay, where do you come from? He says, oh, technically I have never come, and I will never go. So I'm sitting there going, okay, patience. So I says, what do you wish to learn when you come to this reading group on the Vimalakirti Sutra? Because, I have read in the Heart Sutra, technically, since there's never anything to gain, I have come to gain nothing. I'm really not here, I'm not here to gain anything. So I looked at him, so I said, let me ask you a question. Would you mind if I stand up and slap you in the face now? So he goes, no, how can you be so rude? I'm here for the Dharma. So I said, okay, sit down, enjoy your time. Right? I'm not going to say anything anymore. And he became so disappointed, by the end of the first session, he disappeared. So he still went. So I would say this is a really funny conversation about, an attainment that hasn't been attained, yet the man pretends to be in that state. Because all coming from the sense of self, thinking that, yes, this is where I am. But it's fine, even when we have that, right? How do we actually break free from that notion of self? Even as an aspiring bodhisattva who says, okay, I would like to become attached to the Dharma. And so Venerable Master says, okay, now as we go into chapter 5, right, how do we actually go about destroying the notion of self? 2 words, compassion and equality. So the best way to break free from your attachment is to give. And the best way to break free from the self is to have a sense of compassion and a sense of equality. First of all, to realize if you will ever have empathy for other human beings, to feel for their pain, and to give rise to your wish to liberate them from those pain and help them find happiness. So this could lie in every single compassionate thought. And in the process, you might discover that there are only certain people you want to save, right? I like you, I'm going to deliver you, but I don't care about you. And then that's why the notion of equality needs to come in and say, hey, compassion, when skillfully put into practice would be to be without differentiation. Right? So he says, anytime great compassion or Mahakaruna is being practiced, you will see it's a bodhisattva who says, there are none who cannot be liberated. Just like Venerable Master Hsing Yun. He doesn't care who you are because you are already him. And there's nothing that cannot be accomplished. So when he was 92, this college student from mainland China came up to him and goes, oh, Venerable Master, you're so old now. As a translator, I began to get agitated. How rude, right? He was fine. And he says, you're so old now, so is there anything that you regret having not achieved? 你大师，你年纪这么大了，你有没有什么遗憾？ So Venerable Master looks at the young man and goes, my greatest regret is that you are not yet enlightened. 我最大的遗憾就是你还没开悟啊。 So to Venerable Master, his heart is that big, right? No, nothing can offend him, but everyone is a part of him. So nothing is impossible. Okay? And so if you accept these notions, and finally, you will start to generate some kind of aspiration. In one word, what is it? It starts with Bo and D, right? Enter D. Bodhi mind. To liberate both yourself and others in the seeking of Buddhahood. And so, fun way to kind of break yourself free from compassion. Read his guide. And then third way to practice the Dharma Sutra is in chapter 6, where he talks about how to live without abiding. And so this is the part when we go into the more abstract parts of the Dharma Sutra. Okay? And so this is the part where I especially appreciated how he mentioned not a single word from the Dharma Sutra, but totally found a way to help us break free from language and notion. Okay, so first of all, what do we mean by without abiding? We abide in a home, we abide in our family, we abide in self, we abide in a sense of security. But he says, a mind without abiding is a mind that is totally of pure freedom. Doesn't cling on to anything, it is not dependent on anything, it is able to dissolve and deconstruct anything. That is 无助. And so some of the examples used would be when a man was sentenced to death, right? And the king gives him a chance for a pardon and say, okay, you'll be pardoned if you manage to walk around a bustling city with a bowl of oil on your head. Remember that? And then he managed without looking at any beautiful semi-naked ladies, right? Smell of delicious food, or any kind of temptation that usually would have distracted your mind. But at that moment, you don't abide in anything but a matter of life and death. And secondly, he talks about the mind. Right? We have very interesting discussions and the dialogues between the Buddha and many of his disciples about where the mind is. Right? And so you can also think about this and explore the notion of the mind without abiding in it. 无住身心, one of the most famous quotes in the Heart Sutra. How do you allow thoughts to arise without abiding in anything? Right? And at that same time, some examples come out. You know, by not abiding, it's a bit abstract. So he says, okay, you first break free from the sense of abiding by a sense of time. Okay? How do you manage your time well? And so I did something quite fun last night. As your group work was happening, I was also running my reading group on the Vimalakirti Sutra with Beijing. How did I do that? Right? How could I be in two places at the same time? Well, first of all, I recorded my guided reading session so that as you guys were talking, I was talking to you, they were playing the video, they were seeing me. Right? A me that was recorded 5 days ago in New York, but they're watching now in Beijing in the afternoon when the actual me, the physical Miao Guang, was actually in Los Angeles. Right? Think about it, it's ironic, but all three of them are actually me. And then at the end of your talk, I was there with you in the chanting, and then when they finished watching the video, I was able to sit down just in time to log on to Skype and answer their questions. That was fun because it really gave me a sense of ability that we can transcend time and space because they are only concepts. So as the Buddha said, there are really no time, so don't hurry. And so time management will be your ability to break free from these barriers of abiding. And secondly, he says not to abide in positions of power. That's quite an interesting one. That means, do you become dependent? Or do you become vulnerable to that very idea of power, which is taken in the notion of an ability to really change and affect everything? And then thirdly, the greatest liberation we're seeking in our understanding of the Dharma is probably this one: freedom from life and death. Death for ourselves is hard, but death of our loved ones is even harder. When someone in your family passes away and your friend comes, oh, the Dharma tells you to let go, everything's impermanence, so stop crying, don't feel sad, come on, move on, right? You will realize it's really not that. That's not what Buddhism is talking about. Right? It gives us an ability to really dissolve that sentiment with some kind of insight to realize, okay, how do we wisely dissolve the pain and the emotion, okay, to overcome that fear? And so Venerable Master was 92, sitting in a wheelchair, is 99% vision impaired. Right? But right now, whenever he had a major stroke, but right now, whenever we see him, this is the thing he says all the time. The first thing he always asks will be, is there anything I can do to help you? What can I do for you? I will try my best. So imagine yourself in that position. Will you still only think of the benefit of others? Only bodhisattvas who have transcended birth and death will be that free and liberated. It says, I am not sick, I am just inconvenienced. Right? I don't feel suffering. I feel very joyful in the fact that I can still live and to do something for others. And so freedom from life and death has been very, very skillfully and gracefully demonstrated by our teacher, Venerable Master. Okay, so you will see everything in this book is something which he has done and breathed and thought and achieved, honestly. So you're looking at the manual of an enlightened Buddhist master's guide. That's what we can do. Okay. Then finally, chapter 7. I will share the slide with you guys in the WeChat group afterwards. Sorry, I only finished this at 8 o'clock because to me there's no time. So, yeah. And so I was intending to share this with you before the session, but that's okay. That means you will listen more carefully. And the fourth way to practice is cultivation without attachment, without notion, without self. Right? What was the third one? Without abiding, and then now without attainment. Okay? The very, very ultimate goal, it says, okay, it's quite fun. It will say, okay, you are in Xilai to gain something. But I'm going to tell you by tomorrow you would have gained nothing. Would you still fly across North America to sit here? Yes. Oh yeah. Because you already know it, right? You're willing to accept that fact because in that sense you probably would have gained the greatest Dharma. Right? You gain the greatest thing by not holding on to it. You gain the greatest thing by giving it away. And so he says, what do you mean by wu de, without attainment? He says, okay, it's not the fact that the attainments are not there, but you de-acknowledge that such attainment. Right? You negate the very so-called attainment to avoid yourself from, to avoid the arising of attachment. That's on page 185. And so how do you remain without attachment? This is the attitude in order to be that way. It says, you remain unalarmed. How can you be not frightened? And how can you be not scared? If you do that, then there's nothing to attain. So I really love the English expression, you've got nothing to lose. Right? And then in a Buddhist way, you would say, you've got nothing to gain either. So that's life. That's how you be totally free. Yet every day we lose something, we gain something, but that would allow us to transcend it because eventually we're still going to move on. And so that idea of not being affected by anything comes down to the very first word that appears in the last word of this book's title, which is Vajra. Right? Vajra, Jinggang, right? And roughly translated into English as indestructible. I love how Jinggang becomes a transliteration of the word Vajra, because you will not just simply refer to it as something that is firm or indestructible, because it's so much more beyond that. But I also love how the word Jinggang has been appropriated to fit the image of a gorilla that was exposed to radiation and can climb onto the top of the Empire State Building. That's where King Kong comes from. Vajra, and translated into Chinese vocabulary, Jinggang, right? And so when somebody heard the word Jinggang, they says, oh, it means strong, powerful, right? And then when they had that movie about the giant gorilla, they decided to call him King Kong. And then we are reusing the word King Kong in our Buddhist community, right? We refer to the men as the Vajra, the diamond, the indestructible protectors of the Dharma. And so when I was in Nantian Temple in Australia, they established a Jinggang Hufa group. So the Vajra Dharma protectors group, right? And they all consisted of men. And so at one of our Sangha days, they had a group of the Vajra Dharma protectors who were going to make an offering. And our MC had no idea what Jinggang meant. Right? So she just really, really happily announced, let's please put our hands together for the King Kongs of Shan. I almost died. But she was right? King Kong was a transliteration, but somehow we have really redefined the notion of King Kong in English. Right? I'm so sorry, from now on, whenever you hear this word, you think of that giant gorilla. Right? But it's not. I think we need to re-establish the pure and the beautiful meaning of Vajra, the King Kong, right? And so it says, firm mind is like the diamond, right? The diamond means it's unaffected, it's untainted, it's unchanging, yet it's the most powerful mind you can ever hold in your head, because you will be able to transcend impermanence. You will be able to transcend no self. You'll be able to transcend any causes and conditions that arise around you. And I think I'm running out of time, am I? What's the time now? Okay, I have 5 more minutes. Okay. And actually, I will finish that story. Okay. So what is the diamond-like mind? Okay, I'm going to ask you. So by saying that it's unmoved, I think it was in 2017 when Venerable Master was invited to China, right, to preside over the opening ceremony of his one-stroke calligraphy. There was an issue about that particular event because it was under the invitation of the provincial government. And we didn't know the provincial government all that well. So all along, communication has been rather broken. Right? They would say, okay, you arrive at this time, and then we'll take you to the hotel, and then we'll have the opening. And that was pretty much the information they had. And so when the group accompanying Venerable Master arrived in Beijing, Venerable Ru Chang, the director of the Buddha Museum, was one of them who was organizing the one-stroke calligraphy, who was also the chief editor of the Encyclopedia of Buddhist Arts. She arrived, and then she realized there was about 100 people, government officials who were there at the airport to welcome Venerable Master. Okay. But to all of them, the only person that they wanted to welcome was the Venerable Master. So as soon as Venerable Master appeared, this group of people swarmed him, pushed him forward, and then disappeared outside the airport, okay? Leaving the entourage, right? Venerable Ru Chang, Venerable Shirong, right? All the elders and the attendants standing where they are with 400 kilograms of luggage, not knowing where to go. Yeah. They didn't know where the hotel was. They didn't know who to call. They didn't know who to talk to. Okay? And so, but the worst thing is that they have lost Venerable Master. Yeah. So Venerable Ru Chang was in a deep dilemma. Should I first organize the 400 kilograms of luggage and find our hotel, or should I first find our Venerable Master? But no one could answer the question. And so they called a couple of taxis, right, and guessed the hotel to see, oh, maybe this is the nearest fine hotel. And when they arrived, there was no one at the hotel, right? So they managed to take care of the luggage, but they still managed not to find Venerable Master. And so by then, it was about 3 hours after their arrival, so she started to panic. She said, what if somebody kidnaps Venerable Master? Yeah. Okay, I will never be able to pay the ransom. I will never be able to face Fu Guangshan. Fu Guangshan may ask somebody to kidnap me, to save me from my death sentence. She started to feel very scared. But an hour later, right, this group of people who swarmed Venerable Master then swarmed into the hotel lobby again with Venerable Master, who reappeared in one piece. That put Venerable Rusang at peace as well. And so when they settled down, she turned to Venerable Master and asked him, okay, I was so worried. We all didn't know where you are. None of us knew. And so she turned to him and says, okay, Venerable Master, were you worried? He goes, no, why should I be worried? What if they kidnap you? What if they take you somewhere else? What if they lock you up? And so Venerable Master says, it's okay, Physically, I will be with a group of people, but mentally, I'm in samadhi. 人在众中，心在定中. I have no fear. If they kill me, take my life. If they want me, then use me, whatever I can do for them. That's all I have. All I have is my heart. 人一个，命一点，心一条. I'm one person. I am a single life. I am but one heart. That's all I have. I'm without fear. So all along, he enjoyed talking to people he couldn't see. He was visually impaired. He had no idea who he was talking to. He couldn't see who he was surrounded by. He had no idea where his attendant was. Right? He has diabetes. He needs his attendant to look after him. He has no idea where the person whom he can hear most clearly, Venerable Miao Guang, was. He was hearing impaired. Right? He couldn't hear, he couldn't see, but he was totally at peace. That was his unmoving mind. The Vajra diamond, unmoving mind, who is unaffected, right? Who remains the same despite all circumstances. So when Venerable Rusang told that story, she told me that I finally come to realize what the Chan mind represents. 什么叫做禅心? If you look at the Chinese character of Chan, on the left, the radical actually means to show, 是, 对不对? And the radical on the right means simplicity. So Chan is about 示单, 你示范简单. Okay, a Chan mind is to be simple and to be straightforward, and therefore that straightforward mind. And so imagine if you were in that situation again. Would you feel as peaceful? But only when you have accepted everything and are able to really understand where these conditions are really coming about in certain ways, will you be okay? Okay, so that's the unmoving mind. And so coming home to Prajna Paramita, right, the final word, right, he wants you to know that since there is nothing to attain, what exactly is your home? So this actually can be referred to as the very, very amazing opening chapter of the Vimalakirti Sutra. Where is home? 何处是道场? So Venerable Master will say that basically, having broken yourself free from all of these notions, finally your ultimate home, your ultimate abiding will be paramita, the ultimate goal. And here's on page 202, he says, well, we recognize our home by saying the fact that everywhere is a temple. But by temple, it doesn't mean Shilai temple, or any structure that has yellow roofing, or any structure that contains a shrine that worships Buddha, or any building that always includes a group of people carrying out religious rituals. By temple, it means your very own place of practice. 道场. Okay, the place for you to find the way. Okay. So if you recognize your home as your temple, right, you will find peace there. If you recognize your family as your temple, right, you guard them, you cherish them, right, you grow with them, and then your home will be your temple. 直心是道场, 对不对? 身心是道场. The upright mind is your temple. Your deep searching mind is your temple. But the most fun part is for us to see that the greatest place of practice is actually groups of people. 众生是道场. Sentient beings will be your greatest place of practice. That's where you sublimate, that's where you elevate yourself. That's also where you learn to establish good connections with others. And so you might discover in the very beginning, he says the greatest achievement is collective achievement. He says you need to do everything with your fellow human beings. Because in the process of working with your fellow human beings, you perfect yourself, character-wise, wisdom-wise, and everything else-wise. And so by saying that, yes, everywhere is a temple, you can practice anywhere. Right? You can practice in your car, you can practice sitting there, you can practice compassion by smiling at me even if you have no idea what I'm talking about. I sense your compassion. Right? You're practicing patience. Right? You're practicing equality by not selecting your teachers. All of these are so. And so in that process, as the so-called idea of perfecting your human character, right? It makes you also move closer to Buddhahood. And so, so far, I think going from chapter 1 to chapter 7, you probably will have this book paved out. Do you have a clearer idea of where the book is leading you now? I hope so, right? And if you don't, then that's okay. I'm going to leave it up to the Venerables to walk you deeper into the book. Okay? And so, in closing, okay, I am going to just use this session. So I know perhaps you can begin the group works earlier after this break, because that's all I have to do for the walkthrough. I would like to leave more time for everyone to work on the content of the book. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've said enough. Yeah, is that all right? Yeah, we'll move the workshop one session forward. Venerable Zhiyue, the knower of happiness, is now wincing at me. I am not happy. Okay. Yeah, I know. She's going to come and pull my leg. Okay. Right. And so in the closing of the book, you'll see two appendices. Okay. You see the translation of the Diamond Sutra for those who really say, okay, after all this, I still want to get into the sutra. Then you can read through it. And you will see in the Chinese edition, as said before, you see the classical Chinese translation by Punarajiva, and you also see the vernacular elaborations. Okay. I really like those parts because my Chinese is so bad. It's so bad that's why I'm so glad I speak English. Okay. And the English translation is also very beautiful because Robert Smithron has done a very wonderful job to help us understand the content. And then Appendix 2 okay, then shows us the use of verses, because in the Diamond Sutra it actually tells you in many cases the greatest way to accumulate merit is to share, to learn, to understand, and to duplicate these verses that praise the greatest wisdom of the Buddha. And he says, even if you put a little bit of the 4-line verse into practice, it will exceed the merit of you giving away the entire world's wealth. Isn't that fun? So just by reading it to somebody, you are already becoming the wealthiest person in the world. And so he also gives you some of the examples in Appendix 2. Some of the most famous verses. All conditioned Dharma are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows. Like dew and lightning, one should contemplate them in this way. 一切有为法，如梦幻泡影，如露亦如电，应作如是观. And the second one, the mind of the past cannot be obtained, the mind of the present cannot be obtained. 过去心不可得，现在心不可得，等一下点心一定要得. The mind of the past, no. The mind of the present, no. The mind for the snack, go for it. Okay, after this. Okay, so enjoy the reading of the verse. So in conclusion, what is the book about? Okay. He raises the 4 main teachings of the Diamond Sutra. He says, I hope that your practice of the Diamond Sutra can be achieved in 4 ways. To give without notions, to liberate without notion of self, to live without abiding, and to cultivate without attainment. Right? This way, when you practice the Dharma, it allows you to cross from this shore to other shore to fulfill our paramitas. Right? To put it more simply, one should use a spirit that transcends the world to do the work of the world. Right? So don't leave this world. Live this world, and then you'll be free from this world. That's all it's saying. Okay. So to conclude my conclusion, okay. Main point from the sutra, right? What he wants to say by not mentioning contents of the Heart Sutra in that exact structure is for us to realize, first of all, let's walk the walk as the Buddha had done. Right? He lived his life. That was his only way to success and fulfillment. Okay? And he lived this life in an unstrained and limitless potential of the mind of prajna. I think that's the greatest thing. And so, single-mindedly thinking of the Buddha and acting like the Buddha combines knowledge and action into one. 解行并重. No action, no knowledge, honestly. Just like the two wings of a bird or two wheels of a car. Whether you are a monastic or a lay person, right? The main point for our workshop, worldly or transcendent, the Diamond Sutra is a sutra we can all receive without conviction and conscientiously put into practice in a flexible and practical manner. So that's all I have to say. I hope you have been given a clear walkthrough, and after putting into action your need to fulfill that mind for the snack, we'll come back and carry on with our workshop. Thank you very much.
Please rise and join palms. Half bow. Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you for listening to nothing.
Let's give Venerable Miao Guang another big round of applause.